Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the Advice and Shit podcast. I'm your host, As It Is, where I talk about things as they are and basically about what I want to talk about. And if these random topics seem to interest you, then please stick along for the journey. Today, we're going to talk about basically mental health. If you've been on my YouTube channel, then I have a React video where I talk about people who are um, faking mental disorders on TikTok for views and likes. And today we're going to read this article that goes into this a little bit more. Now, this is from the Daily Mail, so it's not, I would say, super reliable. The Daily Mail, they're the ones that have like the Snapchat ads, which is annoying. But like the Washington Post and New York Times had similar articles. Granted, they were behind a paywall, so I couldn't get access to most of those articles. And I thought this one kind of wraps up most of what's going on. And we're going to talk about different statistics because they cite a different paper, and I'll pull up the graphics from this other paper so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So, this article is called Addicted to Being Sad, Teenage Girls with Invisible Illnesses Known as Spoonies, which I didn't know that was a thing, post TikToks of themselves crying or in a hospital to generate thousands of likes as experts raise concerns over internet-induced wave of mass anxiety. Now, a paper that, this is not a paper that the Daily Mail cited. It was a paper that the New York Times cited that we'll look into. But I think a lot of this is linked with COVID, no one being able to go out, go anywhere for a couple of years, not being able to develop friends, in certain places, or like developing, especially for really young people, those really necessitated a stroke. Those really necessary, like communication skills that obviously I don't have right now. Wow, that was so stupid. But like those communication skills that you develop through going to school in person that you can't exactly get from going to school online on Zoom. So that's what we're talking about today. Today I'm drinking a coffee. I got a pumpkin spice coffee creamer because my friend put me on to Starbucks pumpkin spice lattes. Never had them before, and it was delicious. And this pumpkin spice coffee creamer that I got from Aldi has like a weird nut aftertaste. Also, my coffee's cold because I forgot about it. Whatever. But anyways, let me know like what kind of coffee you're drinking if watching this on YouTube. Comment down below. But yeah, so it's kind of sad because I've talked to teachers and I'm like, how do you think COVID has affected, your schooling? Like college professors say that like, oh, these students are coming in from high school, they're not prepared, they didn't really learn how to study, maybe they just were able to pass or they cheated because everything was online, they don't know how to study, their maturity seems very stunted, and that's kind of it across the board. A lot of people say, like teachers of like high school or middle school or even elementary school that I've talked to about this, because I just love hearing people's perspective on it. Their maturity level is very stunted, and I think this is going to be a really weird generation. Those kids that went through school, especially elementary school, kindergartners who started school on Zoom. Those kids, it's gonna be weird. I think it's gonna be weird. There's gonna be a little bit of mess up. They're not gonna be as good at communicating, or they're gonna have to work extra hard to like catch up in maturity. I think it's going to be kind of strange, um, because elementary school teachers that I've talked to about this, they say that like kids don't know how to play imagination because like I don't know if you were I'm 23. Hopefully, if you're 23, you like just basically played imagination. You just went outside and just did whatever. You just played. You're like this is the scene. This is what we're doing. Like this is the game. Okay, we're playing. And now sometimes I remember as a kid, they would get a little extreme. Like not extreme like fighting or something, but like there was this one game that we would play. We're like, okay, now we're the shop owners, okay, of a burrito shop because we had like this big old blanket that it was like a bed sheet that we didn't have the other pieces for, so we got to play with it and take it outside to make like a tent or something. And we're like, okay, this is the game. We stood on top of a hill. We're like, okay, we are the owners of this burrito shop. You over there, uh, you over there, you're gonna be coming in to order a burrito. And okay, so come in, tell us we want the burrito. And they're like, okay, I want this. And we're like, okay, cool. We're making this burrito. We're making this burrito. And then, because we're getting all the supplies and putting it all in. And then they're like, why aren't you putting it on the taco? And then we would wrap the person up in the blanket and take our like things they added on. It was like grass, things that were like, added onto the taco, put it on the person's head, and then like roll them down the hill because they were the taco and we were shop owners that were cannibals apparently. Because then we would pretend like we ate them. And the thing is, we would take turns being the customer who got eaten. It was basically a game that was fun to get pushed down a hill. You know, if you let kids play imagination, sometimes weird shit happens. Apparently, pretend cannibalism it was the game that we came up with. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, looking back, that was so weird. But honestly, it was really fun because you got pushed down a hill and then people, because you were like, the cannibal shop owners would chase after you because then you're out up in the burrito. Once you get to the bottom of the hill, you try to hop away as a burrito like you're trying to escape. And this may sound very weird for all the listeners, all 5 listeners, but to me, I look back with joy because it was so funny to try and run away wrapped up in a bed sheet pretending I was a burrito. But that's like the power of imagination. It's just so fun. And sometimes, that granted, that's a little weird story, but that was such a fun game that was so stupid. And I talked to elementary school teachers. Kids don't know how to just play, to just be like, okay, this is the scene, this is what we're doing. Probably not cannibalism, but they're just like, this is what we're doing. They don't do that. And I know this teacher, she had to like get the kids, she's like, okay, I'll play with y'all. This is the scene. She's basically having to teach them how to play imagination. And it's really sad. And the only game of imagination that they could play themselves was playing Among Us. And one of the kids would say, oh, I saw him vent. He vented. That's the closest they got to imagination playing, was pretending they saw someone vent. Because there's no vents outside. And that's just like really sad that they couldn't think of something um on their own. So I don't know, it just kind of makes me sad when I think about it. Um, because they're just kids, and it's kind of like creativity is really important. Um, I think those kids are stunted in that sense, but also they're the teenagers that are trying to like, I think when you're like really small, you're able to like live life. You don't really care what you're thinking about yourself because you're just like, I'm 5. My world is me. And then you become a teenager and you become aware of, oh, this is how other people perceive me. Oh, well, I don't like that. Let me change this. And so that, because like your brain develops and shit during puberty. Your brain grows because it becomes more aware of like your surroundings, how the world works around you. And so there are kids who don't, I guess, didn't get that experience of like seeing other people around them, like observe their surroundings. Because, like, granted, middle school, that time where you went to puberty and you're like realizing how people judge you and stuff, and you're like, oh God, I hate this. But like that develops you into, you know, what kind of person are you going to be? Are you going to be a pushover? Are you going to let yourself have shitty friends that don't care about you because you can't like read the room, you can't read what's going on and realize that they don't actually care about you? I went through a lot of shit. Now I see that and I'm like, no, back up 6 feet, stay away from me, not my cup of tea. I think these kids won't be able to do that, and it's honestly a little sad because of that. And so that would spike depression and anxiety because they didn't go through that learning if people actually like me or not phase. It sucks. So now they're like really unsure because everything's on a screen and it's harder to interpret how people really mean through a screen. And so, but this paper talks about, or this journal article talks about teenage girls and young women who are posting upsetting footage of themselves in hospital or crying on social media, many of them suffering from invisible chronic illnesses which often have no obvious cure and leave them exhausted from daily tasks. They are calling themselves the Spoonies. The group often encourage each other to lie to doctors to get the diagnosis they want. That's not great. Some Spoonies suffer from MS or Crohn's disease, while others suffer from rarer ones, which are harder to diagnose. Others join groups to discuss the negative side effects of their conditions and often end up competing with each other for who is the sickest. So that is kind of like, I think people want to be in groups so bad of feeling connected, a group where they feel accepted, you know, because they didn't have anybody in person because they didn't go to school in person. So they tried to find, I guess, groups of people online to feel connected. And, you know, you want a community behind you, and it fell into this. Granted, I remember when I was like a teenager, I was a middle schooler or whatever, like the group that I fell into was like people who obsessed over books. Like I was like Percy Jackson gang. Yeah, I'm obsessed. I had a fake Instagram account for Percy Jackson. That's how I think I was in high school too. I think I was like 15. I was 15 years old. I had a fake Instagram account for Percy Jackson. Like talk about embarrassing. But like that was my like community of people online. I don't know where are like this is why the movies where it's like apocalyptic Hunger Games, Divergent, Percy Jackson, like that era needs to come back because instead of people having little communities online where it's we love this book or this movie or whatever, it's disorders. That doesn't make any sense. That's so weird. And it's not positive because they're competing for who's sickest. And this article talks about a girl who thought she had BPD, borderline personality disorder, and she talked about how these videos, like because she started seeing videos about BPD, the way that social media works, it recommends things that you looked at for longer. Then more and more videos like that got recommended to her, and then that was like all that she saw, which I think is like a terrible thing and has really pushed people into these groups without meaning for them to be pushed into these groups, which isn't good. Um, but she, because she saw it once, was like, oh, what is this? Then she just kept getting fed that, and then she started thinking, because again, they were being too general sometimes on social media by trying to give mental health awareness. They're too general in the specifics of, oh, I have this disorder and I do this. you having this disorder and you doing this may not be correlated. If it is correlated, that's great and you be specific, but majority of the time on the internet, people are too generic about it. And so then everyday people don't have these disorders think, oh, well, I relate to this thing that you do, so therefore I must have this disorder. And that's not how that works. Um, so there's a lot of problems with that. But this girl saw a lot of videos, and then she saw people who were cutting themselves, which is really scary, terrible thing. But they talked about how it gave them power. It made them feel like they had control over something, which is so crazy that people like that was on the internet. Like videos of people like encouraging others to do that to themselves, to like self-harm. But yet yesterday I was on Instagram and I literally saw a reel of this girl's boobs. And I was like, what the fuck? I just went and like unfollowed. It used to be a meme page. It used to be a fun meme page. And then I saw boobs in my face, like full on boobs. Not even a pasty covering the nipple. And I was like, what the fuck, Instagram? And I unfollowed that account. But I was like, how are we promoting self harm? Like that's cool. And also like why someone, because they were trying to recommend their, I think in the description something about like, oh, go follow their OnlyFans. But I'm not seeing somebody's nipples on the internet. I don't even want to see a guy's nipples on the internet. Like, no. Whatever. Anyways, it's a different side tangent. Um, I've seen videos where people are like, Facebook Marketplace did let me post this picture of a table because the table was too sexual, which is so weird. But I could have nipples on Instagram and I can have people promoting self harm on TikTok, whatever. But this girl she started self harming because she thought it would make her feel better, but she didn't like doing it. She didn't really want to do it. And this doctor recommended that she not be on like any internet. And within 2 weeks, her BPD symptoms that she was exhibiting went away, and she didn't feel the need to cut herself or self harm or anything. And it was just like and the way they describe it in this article is like it's like a virus of the mind from the internet, like a virus of the mind that's being spread via the internet, where people are catching symptoms of these disorders because, oh, mental health awareness, it was being too generalized. So then people think, well, I do this thing, but this person with this disorder did. So therefore, I must have this disorder. There is maybe a correlation, but this is not the causation of the action. The disorder doesn't have to be the causation of the action. The person could just do this because it's correlated. Yes, it's correlated. A person with this disorder did this action. There's a correlation. The person, right? But it's not a causation. The person didn't do the action because they have this disorder. When there is a relationship like that, like a causation relationship like that, that's how you can make a diagnosis. Most people on the internet are not doing these causation relationships. They're just talking about correlations. And so people think they have disorders when they don't. And it's really messed up. It really makes me nervous. Like it makes me, I feel like I'm on edge waiting for like, um, you know, all these kids to be like super depressed. Like I, reels are so addicting. Or reels or TikTok or whatever is super addicting. Like over the summer, I just deleted all of my social media because it was so addictive. Like I realized I was spending hours on it. And is that really how you want to spend your life? Is online? Is that how important the online world is to you? Do you want to spend your life on it? I encourage you to try and delete your social media apps. I think it'd be good for you. And then you'd realize how addicted you are to it, because I was completely addicted to it. I was spending way too much time. I put that little 1 hour time limit thing, did jack shit for me, because I'd say, remind me in 15 minutes, like 8 times. So that meant I spent an extra 2 hours on Instagram watching reels for no reason. Because, like, I could be doing so many more things. And people talk about how, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. Well, it's not really time. It's, what are you prioritizing? Is, doing that new habit, learning that new language, um, doing that new hobby really a priority to you, or is watching TikTok a priority to you? Because if you thought about it, you would say, oh, well, obviously learning the language, doing the hobby, um, doing the athletics, doing the sport or whatever, is grandiose, more important. It's obviously more important because it will give something back to me. I'm giving my time towards this hobby, learning a language, exercising. I'm giving my time towards it. It's a type of event activity I can do where I'll get something back from it. I'm doing a hobby. If I'm doing art, I could sell art, or I could make that for Christmas presents or something. If I'm learning a new language, maybe I could, get good enough, travel the world, and, go to that country, practice talking with people, or tutor someone else. Or if I'm exercising, I could lose weight, have lower cholesterol, um, lower blood pressure, have a better, healthy body overall, and live longer overall. We know this in our heads. We know this, that those things that would give back to us, those activities, are more important than watching TikToks or watching reels that are like a month old TikToks. Like, we know that. Deep down in our soul, we know that. And yet, we prioritize watching TikToks over these activities that would be beneficial for us. Why? Why do we do that? You could say the way that the apps are set up is pretty addictive, which Netflix did a documentary series about it, where like the people who first made Instagram and Facebook talked about how they basically did an engineering class on how to get people addicted to social media. They followed how people get addicted to gambling with the pulling the reel on the side of the coin slot machines. You just pull the thing down and refresh, endlessly refresh the screen, always new content. It's about how they will show you something that will be more reactive, get you a bigger reaction, so you'll stay online more, you'll stay online longer. Social media is manipulative in the sense that it's trying to get you to stay. That's why they have the personalized ads, because you're like, oh, what kind of ad am I going to get? You know, it's trying to get you to stay and spend more time on their app. And so it is hard to make that priority. It is hard to make that transfer over to that, making those activities that actually benefit you a priority. It's so hard to do. And that's why I encourage you to just delete the app. Just delete it. Just delete it. Cold turkey it, honestly. Because it's awkward for like a week or two. It honestly is. It's like, I don't know what to do with my time, for like these 5 minutes I have between doing something. I don't know what to look at. I don't know what to do. Because it is awkward, because you realize how much time you filled in your day where there's like in between times where you could probably just like, chill a minute, have some thoughts or whatever, you filled with looking at a screen. And it's so weird because I really did was like, I don't know what to do right now. In this in between time, I feel so awkward. This is so weird. And if you notice, if you pull out your phone to check something, check the time or something like that, pull out your phone, check something, people that are around you, because we're all kind of addicted to our phone, will also pull out their phone just to look at it a second. It's so weird when you notice it. And I cannot encourage you enough to try to delete the apps. And if you really think you're tough enough, go a month without it, see how you do. And if you think, well, like, I want to share what I'm doing. For who? Like, really, really think about it. Like, for who? Because I thought about it after I leave. I'm like, oh, but like, I wanted to post these pictures of this thing, or oh, this would be funny to share, or whatever. Funny for who? Everyone that I would like tell the story to in real life, that'll take the time to explain the whole story to, or like show this cute video or whatever to in real life, I have their phone number. Why don't I just text them? Why do I need to post this? Why am I doing that? And then you realize, oh, it's not really for the connection with the people that, you know, you're friends with. Because if you really wanted them to see it, you would text it to them. It's kind of like a popularity thing. That's like, I remember in high school, and I should have realized then I was connected to social media, that I had heard that the more frequently you posted, like you couldn't post too much, but if you posted like once a day or every other day, you would show up on people's feed more to get more likes. And so I started doing that. I had nothing to post. I was in high school. Nothing interesting was going on, but I did that because I wanted likes. For what? What do likes give me? Do they make me have a fitter like exercise does? Do they make me more artistic or creative like painting or knitting would? I forgot what the third thing was. Do they make me more intelligent or interesting by like learning a new language? No. So why do I care? Why do I care? It's this seeking of validation, right? I think that's where this kind of plays back into the people are competing to see who is the sickest among them in these group, these anxiety or these BPD or these depression like kind of communities. It's like, well, I want to be validated the most. I'm going to be the sickest, so I get the most sympathy. So then I am validated the most. Because people are looking externally for validation instead of looking internally themselves and being like, I'm fine with who I am, myself. I don't need outward validation from other people. And that kind of goes into like, I don't know if this is just me, but like, I think, because I heard another podcast talk about this, parents raise kids to be like good at, be like, you're a good kid if you listen. You just follow directions right away without asking any questions. Great child. But then if you're a parent and you see your kid at 30 years old doing that, just doing what anyone says without question, you'd be like, terrible adult. Why are you doing that? Well, because you trained the person to just do what other people said. Not make their own decisions. Not, validate their own feelings and decide whether or not they want to actually do something. And so I think there's a very big validation gap people are trying to fill by going to these subgroups. Because, like, even myself, I've done this with, like, disorders. Like, not disorders. When I was suspicious that I had ADHD, because it is within my extended family, and even after I got a diagnosis, I would go to these ADHD, like, subgroups of Reels or TikToks to see people's symptoms or things that they said, oh, I have ADHD and I do this, to be like validating myself and my diagnosis, because my parents didn't actually want me to get diagnosed. They're like, you're fine, you're smart. And I'm like, yeah, but like I can't focus and it's becoming a problem. And they're like, no, you're fine. We would have noticed, like, because it's that generation. Oh my God, to adjust. If you're on Spotify and you're like, what did she just grunt? I was adjusting in my chair. But yeah, it's just really interesting because I've even done that myself. And then I looked at people who, because I was doing looking at correlations, person with ADHD did this, and well, I do this, so I must have ADHD, looking for correlations that were on the internet instead of looking at the diagnosis I got from a fucking doctor who is not who is not certified, maybe certified to make those diagnoses. Instead, I went to people on the internet and their correlations, and oh, they act this way, I act that way. That validates that I have ADHD because I'm gaslighting myself into saying, well, even though this doctor said that, maybe he doesn't know because my parents aren't agreeing, and so I'm gonna look online. Like, when we think about that logically, what the fuck, that doesn't make any sense. And so I think thinking about things like that just makes it like really digesting your thoughts and thinking about it will be beneficial, because even when I did that on Instagram, and then I would see people who say, I'm a person with ADHD, and I do this, and I'd be like, oh, well, I don't do that action that they did, but I'm supposed to have ADHD. This correlation doesn't match me, so does that mean I don't have ADHD? I'm getting correlation and causation confused again. It's so stupid, and I really think it would help so many people if they just took a break from social media and then looked around all the time that they have. Like, I joined a book club. I thought that was like an old lady thing. Nope, me and a lot of people my age, we started a book club, and it's honestly great to just like meet with people that I don't work with and talking and reading a book. Granted, I don't have the book we're reading right now, but like spending my time on something that is gonna not improve me in some way, but like give back to myself instead of just scroll, 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 and then give my eyes fatigue. Like, I'm kind of rambling, I guess. I guess I'm just asking you to please take a break from social media. I don't know. That's how I got into a lot of interesting podcasts. Like, We Can Do Hard Things, great podcast. And really inspirational. That's where I heard about the something I said earlier. I don't remember. That train of thought just out the window. The imaginary window that there's not there. So now to go to a different paper, just so we can look at, I'll scroll up to, if you're on Instagram, if you're on Spotify, I'll read you the title of this. It's Global Prevalence and Burden of Depressive and Anxiety Disorders in 204 countries and territories in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this is a science, not a science. This is like oh my gosh. It's in a scientific journal. That's what I'll say. And I think that was some confusion. I actually had a guy come and talk. I'm in grad school. I'm getting a doctorate in chemistry. I actually had this guy come and talk. He's the one who did like research on type of masks and which masks are better, to defend against COVID. And in order to get a paper published in a journal, you have to go under so much scrutiny, like by reviewers who are like, well, how do you know this data is right? How do you know this is right? How do you know this is right? Like it is like when it's in a journal, it's supposed to be like certified gold. We know this to be a fact. And then you had Gator company, like the Gator face mask thing, companies post like an article from someone who didn't have to get review, get reviewer edits or put in a journal. They didn't have to get their data like certified gold, looks great. And they said, well, we think that the Gator mask works great. And that's like hearsay. That you're working for the company. This is independent researchers who had to go under scrutiny before it even got published in a journal. What the fuck? But anyways, so the point of that was that this, oh goodness, let me move this. I'm using EndNote. I don't know if you've ever heard of EndNote. It's a good paper thing. But something that I thought was interesting from the Daily Mail thing is they talked about it's all these girls that are doing this. All these girls are crying on social media. And I was like, all the girls are crying on social media? Really? Is it really all the girls? And then I looked at this paper that takes a lot to get published in a journal, and I was like, oh, it is all the girls. There is some, increase in depression and anxiety among boys, but it's mostly the girlies. So if you're on Spotify, you can't really see. If you're on YouTube, I'll describe the graph. So this graph on the left, it shows females, and it has a thing that's for during COVID-19 pandemic, which is pink, and before COVID-19 pandemic, which is blue. And on the left, on the right, is boys. So, in general, the boys had lower, let me see. So this is the global prevalence of major depressive disorders in the top in A, and then anxiety disorders in the bottom graphs. So, in general, the depressive disorders in males, in females, 25 and lower the males were kind of smaller than the females. In general, the females had higher levels of depression and anxiety before COVID-19, which happened in all ages, this increase of depression and anxiety among females. And this is disorders, like diagnosed. And that was kind of known because social media scrutinizes women and how they look so much, so that makes sense. But also, I think because women are considered emotional, and are more typically more willing to talk about their emotions, I think they would be more likely to go seek help. Whereas men who are told to be masculine and buck up, they're not really told to seek help or express their emotions. They're less likely to seek help. So that could be why there's a slight increase in depression, anxiety in women before the pandemic. Overall, there's an increase in depression, anxiety in females and males during the COVID-19 pandemic. Um, there is not really an increase in depression among males 75 or older during the pandemic, which is interesting. There's an increase in anxiety a little bit, but females, there's not really that much of an increase in depression among females 75 or older. It's a larger increase than the males who didn't have an increase in depression 75 or older. But compared to the increase in anxiety over of 75 years or older, it's ridiculous. I think overall anxiety increased way, the amount of people who had a diagnosis of anxiety increased so much greater um, during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that could be related to the fact that, like, no one was allowed to leave their homes. The news was always negative, 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 the end of the world. That would make anybody anxious and feel isolated. Um, and so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope you like listening to this podcast. Hope it was interesting. Hope maybe you learned something. Maybe you're inspired to quit social media for a minute. I hope so. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.